Welcome back. This week at PMQs, the Speaker was, let's say, not too happy with MP John Nicholson.
So if that was an apology, I don't think it was very good.
And you might be wondering why the Speaker would be going mad at him about a letter, and why the title of this video is looking like another cover-up by the Speaker. Well, allow me to explain. This all started back in May of 2022. Nadine Dorries, the then Secretary of State for Digital Media, Culture and Sport, was attempting to justify the planned sale of Channel 4 to a select committee. During the hearing, she claimed that the reality show that she appeared on via the channel was in fact all fake.
I'm just curious.
But then I discovered later they were actually actors.
Oh, were they? I did not know.
What, the MPs or the...
No, the people in. So the Channel 4 production actually.
It was, yes.
And so the parents of some of the people, of the boys in that programme, actually came here to have lunch with me and contacted me to tell me actually they were in acting school and that they weren't really living in a flat and they weren't real...
A headline for tomorrow.
Yeah, they're actually actors.
Upon hearing this, the Channel 4 launched their own inquiry. Channel 4 is owned by the government but is totally self-funded. It receives no taxpayers' money. Therefore, claims like this would be very damaging for the channel. They found that the comments made by Dorries were untrue. Now, select committees are a part of parliamentary proceeding, and so anything disclosed is protected under parliamentary privilege. Basically, that just means that they can say what they like and they're not going to get sued for it. But that doesn't mean they can lie. Lying to a committee is the same as lying in Parliament, and that's a breach of the Ministerial Code. Just as in Parliament, they're expected to come back at their first opportunity and correct the record. However, shortly after the committee hearing, Boris Johnson resigned his premiership, and as a loyal supporter of Johnson, Nadine Dorries also resigned her ministerial post. Once the truth had been presented to the Select Committee, they decided that if Dorries remained in post, she would have been referred to the Privileges Committee, which is a sort of group of MPs who are like a court within Parliament. They gather evidence, witnesses, and decide if an MP has broken the ministerial code and what kind of punishment they deserve. Usually a suspension, or a long enough suspension that can actually lead to a recall, and the MP could lose their seat. So it's not something that you want to be going down. However, as she resigned and no longer had the power to sell Channel 4, the Culture Committee decided against passing her to the Privileges Committee, instead produced quite a damning report for the Speaker to allow the House to decide what to do with her. John Nicholson, who sits on this Culture Committee, was not happy with this outcome, and especially when it was reported that Johnson was going to elevate her to the House of Lords for nothing more than to being his supporter. Nicholson wrote to the Speaker requesting that he still go ahead and refer Dorries to the Privileges Committee and effectively block her peerage on the ground that she's lied to Parliament. The Speaker wrote back, and this correspondence was actually private, but Nicholson did release this video on Twitter.
Hello, I know a lot of you are following the case of Nadine Dorries, the former Culture Secretary, and the fact that she appeared before the Commons Culture Committee, on which I sit, and gave false testimony to it. Now, the committee published an excoriating report, and I don't think that Nadine Dorries, because of that, should go to the House of Lords in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. So I sent a copy of the report to Mr. Speaker, and he's responded, and I thought I should update you on what he said. He says that he's considered my letter, but he has decided to take no further action and not to refer Nadine Dorries to the Privileges Committee. In other words, she'll suffer no consequences for what she's done. And I thought you should know.
Now, we don't know what the rest of the letter says, but if true, the Speaker is taking no further action and effectively letting Dorries off the hook. During PMQs, he had this to say about the Twitter post.
When she was the Secretary of State for DCMS, the Honourable Member for Ochil, South and Perthshire subsequently wrote to me asking for precedence for a complaint of a breach of privilege, as was his right. I declined to do so since the bar for such a complaint is high. The House should only take action when essential in order to provide reasonable protection for the House, its members or its officers from improper obstruction. I note the committee itself, of which the Honourable Gentleman is a member, has said, had Miss Dorries remained the Secretary of State, driving policy of selling the channel, we may have sought referral to the Privilege Committee. But as her claims have not been inhibited the work of the committee and she is no longer has a position of power over the future of Channel 4, we are instead publishing this report to enable the House and its members to draw its own conclusion. So I consider it appropriate to respect the committee's assessment of the situation. Correspondence on matters of privilege is private. Indeed, had to go to great lengths to ensure that members can write to me in confidence on any matter, knowing their communication will remain private. Expect the same courtesy in my replies. The honourable member has seen fit to give a partial and biased account of my letter on Twitter, and I await his apology. I gave the honourable member notice that I will be raising this matter at this time, but I do stress it is not the way we should be doing business in this House. Honourable member for Ockhill and Pershing.
Mr. Speaker, as you've
the floor back.
Mr. Speaker, as you've just explained, the Commons Culture Committee in which I sit published a unanimous cross-party report about the testimony of the Right Honourable Member and the testimony she gave to the committee, and there are now considerable public interest in what should happen next. I want to put on record, Mr. Speaker, that I deplore social media pylons against you or indeed anyone else. I've been on the receiving end of them and they are exceedingly unpleasant. But could I ask for guidance on what I and other members should tell their constituents about integrity in politics in this context? If someone misleads a committee, what should happen next?
Can I just say, integrity is that, first of all, printing the letter, but only half the letter, is not integrity. In fact, far from it. It misled the people of this country. It certainly put me in bad light with the people of this country, and I don't expect that to happen in an impartial speaker. So if that was an apology, I don't think it was very good. David Davis.
Mr. Speaker, in following on from that, honourable members of this House have certain strict duties on them. First, there is a duty of upholding the institutions of this House. Clearly, in breaching the confidentiality of the Speaker's private correspondence, the member for Oakhill and South Perthshire has knowingly broken that rule. And frankly for that, if that was an apology, that was not sufficient for that alone. But we also have a duty to tell the truth. Now, in his public pronouncements, he implicitly criticised you, Mr. Speaker, for not referring the DCMS Secretary of State to the Privileges Committee. But you were simply following the convention of agreeing with the DCMS Select Committee, of which he is a member. And when they decided not to refer, there was no minority report from him. There was not even a vote against from him. It was a unanimous vote. So what he was trying to do, Mr. Speaker, was to blame you by his partial release of his letter, and he was leading the public to believe that somehow you made this decision against the wishes of the committee. The rules of this House do not allow me to assert whether I view the misleading of the public as deliberate. So the House can make its own judgment on that. But this miserable half apology was...
Now, to me, the Speaker seems more worried about his public appearance than actually following up on the breach of the Ministerial Code. But there are some questions here. Is what John Nicholson did a personal vendetta because Dorries is up for a peerage? Why wouldn't the Speaker recommend the Privileges Inquiry? And why was Conservative MP David Davis allowed to close ranks and weigh in on the attack when he's known to lie to a Select Committee himself? Some say the Speaker is just trying to get a peerage himself, and he's certainly covering up for them. He certainly doesn't like his public image being tarnished, and it's not the first time he's covered up for the Tories. But to see that issue being swept under the rug, then you'll need to watch this video next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.